right. So we will get started this morning. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Yes. Glad we get to spend this day together, full of love. Yes. That's right. All right. So today we only have a couple items that are before us to vote on, but to get us started today, we have a presentation by David DeVelder about the Kent County Land Bank. And then also, Commissioners, I'm just going to draw your attention that we also have later on today after COW a special briefing of the Rose Center for Public Leadership Fellowship. And we have some individuals here later on to talk about that. But we'll get started today with the Kent County Land Bank Authority update, and then we have 3 items to discuss and vote on. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor Bliss, Commissioners.
And all you have to do is you can go back and
Thank you. Well, thanks for having us again. And we're excited to report on a year. We'll try to do it quickly in 10 minutes. A year's worth of work in 10 minutes is not easy, so bear with me. So in 2016, we had 43 properties that were tax foreclosed in the city of Grand Rapids that went into the land bank, thanks to our partnership. So we had 3 slated for demo, 26 single-family homes, 2 multifamily rentals. Can you guys hear me okay, everybody?
We can.
And 12 vacant lots. And the pictures as I'm going through are pictures of the property. So we had some dandies this year, as always. We had 1 demo that was slated for single family that was slated for demo that we salvaged with one of our developers for affordable rental. 2 demolitions that are underway. 1 single family that was used for rental that was previous rental in a neighborhood where they have a lot of rental. 2 multifamily rentals which were sold, and 25 single family homes that were sold to homeowners. We're proud of that. 11 that were sold to developers who will be renovating those properties and selling them directly to a homeowner, and then 10 that went directly to the homeowner through our process by placing the properties in the MLS. And 4 to nonprofits. The 12 vacant lots, we had 5 buildable that were sold under our development agreements that we do with the sale of our vacant property, and 7 side lots. So the results were quite a bit different this year because the real estate market is quite intense these days. There's not a lot of inventory. We hold our properties for 20 days on the market before we accept offers. So average days on market was 20. So we are pleased that we do that. I mean, that really brings homeowners out and better development plans to us as opposed to accepting the first offer. We had 29 offers on a house at 550 Cass. That was pretty astounding. And then 131 offers on 21 properties that were placed in the MLS. Average sales price $46,000. Development plans added up to $1.4 million, total sales $1.3 million, 96% home ownership rate. So it certainly underscores what we're trying to accomplish. 7 vacant lots that were sold will result in $730,000 in new construction, $3.4 million economic impact. So the city lots that were transferred to the land bank this past year, they were all the excess inventory that the city had that they were maintaining, and majority were side lots. We had 69 side lots. We had 47 buildable properties, the majority of which will be under development plan with the city of Grand Rapids for affordable housing. 48 other, which I'll talk about in a minute. 116 that can be sold, transferred under a side lot, and 58 that are in process for those side lots. So this is other. Up on the left there's Hobson Northeast. It's a huge drop off, but it's platted, and we have a lot of those types of properties that just can't be developed, but maybe someday. And then the one on the right is an easement driveway, and we have several of those that we're probably going to have to maintain and get easement agreements with the neighbors. They're just properties that just kind of are no man land that no one really thinks about, but we're going to have to get those handled with the neighbors for access. And then this is, we have pictures of a couple properties. These are examples of work that our developers do.
David, can I ask a question about the vacant lots, the 48 other? Are there any that fall under this category that potentially could be buildable, where maybe the size of the lot is smaller than allowed for a buildable lot? Or are there any that potentially we could convert over to a buildable lot? Are they all similar to this, where they're easements, or it looks like a street that somebody's using as a driveway?
The majority of the other are these no man's land type properties. There are some side lots that are potentially buildable, but those we put under buildable. So.
Okay. Oh, so you already categorized them
Yeah.
under buildable.
So
Okay.
some of the other might be properties where we have to subdivide to get to the neighbors. So we're holding those temporarily until we can approach all the neighbors. And we have approached some, and some are willing to pay for surveys to split those up to get them to the neighbors.
Nice.
It's just oddball. It's like a lot of wooded property that's kind of between streets and just funky stuff. So
And
we're working
lots
through
where
a
you
lot of
can't
that.
get to them, there's no access.
No.
Okay.
So, or it's an elevation issue.
Okay.
So it's steep slope. So where possible, we deed that to the neighbors, but some of those that we have to hold.
Okay. My second question is, as you looked at all of these properties, did we also look, I thought we did this ahead of time, but I just want to confirm, did we also look at properties that potentially could be turned into green space in areas of our city that is in need of green space? Like, did we work with the Parks Department?
We really don't have any of those.
We don't?
Not that are usable,
Okay.
other than our buildable lots that are used for community gardens
Okay.
temporarily until there's a market to build on them. But we really don't have any properties that could be preserved for park.
Okay.
You're going to say what I'm going to say. John knows the expert.
That's right.
I was just going to add, that's a very good question, Mayor. And we did, in the review of all these properties before we transferred them to the land bank, we did work with all the various city departments in terms of properties that the city should retain, but also easements that are necessary for public utilities and rights of way. So there were 9 properties maybe that have been transferred to the Parks Department.
Okay.
So, yes.
I briefly recall a conversation about that, but I just couldn't remember the details.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Thank you.
done.
Thanks, John. Okay. So this is 936 Sigsbee that was renovated. Real nice renovation here. Before and after photos of the kitchen. A lot of these properties are in pretty rough shape, so we're astounded by how nicely they get redone. This is an upstairs bedroom that was turned into a full bath. This is 550 Cass. Nice renovation there with new decor and finishes. So I guess the other thing I forgot to mention is that there's only 136 single-family homes for sale on the market right now in the city limits of Grand Rapids on the MLS. So we do have severe inventory shortages, which need to be watched in the development community, because we do have pretty extreme price increases right now that probably are not healthy for the market. So something to keep in mind. So what's next with the land bank? MSU is Land Policy Institute is studying our work for the last 5 years. They're doing phone interviews, online survey, economic impact analysis, hedonic price analysis, which I don't really understand, but these are all PhD grads who are working on this, and that'll be done in March, so we'll share that with you when that is completed. And then single family and townhouse new construction in partnership with GRCC Link and Kent ISD. been some zoning challenges with this, and we certainly appreciate the support of the mayor and Eric DeLong and Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Jones, and we've worked really hard to try to come up with innovative ways to create affordable new construction in some of the neighborhoods where the Land Bank has property and other nonprofits. So we're excited to see how that turns out. And we're also with GRCC going to be, it's going to result in getting more young folks into the trades with that partnership. So that GRCC has been doing that for many years, and we're excited to be a part of that. And I think I missed one slide in there that Dave wanted me to mention. Actually, I don't know that all the slides are in here, or maybe I'm not there yet. Oh yeah. So this picture here on the vacant lots, there's a picture of Henry here on Madison Avenue. It's a community garden that he created in the last couple years, and he lives nearby, and he was displaced from a nearby community garden, so we had allowed him to be able to garden that property, and now he's selling the greens to Link Cafe across the street. And we have been very successful with community gardens, and it's been a great outreach to the community, so we're really thankful for that. And I guess the only other thing I'd say is the homes that are being purchased by our developers this year, the average sales price is in the 130 to 150 range, which is an extremely affordable range for a fully renovated property. So that's a very important piece to our work that we're creating in the marketplace. Any questions?
So I'll start off with a couple comments, commissioners, and a question, and then turn it over to you. And as a member of the Land Bank Board or authority, I'm really proud of the work that the Land Bank has done. It's been an evolution, as you all know, since we started, and really some great leadership, but also I want to say a couple things. One is just to remember that the Land Bank, it's more than just to redevelop houses. It's really an economic development tool, and we need to make sure that we're always thinking about how we can contribute to the economic development in the community, and obviously housing is a part of that. I also want to touch on just a couple things with the Land Bank. I know all of us have had conversations with individuals from nonprofit organizations, and I want to just assure you that we are actively the Land Bank is actively working in partnership with nonprofits, but also as a board, we recently had a subcommittee come together from the advisory committee, really looking at our policy in how we work with nonprofit organizations. Again, it's been an evolution, and we've learned a lot, but I want to let you know that we're working on that. I think it's important to point out our commitment to affordable housing, which is very much aligned with our goals as a city commission. I think it's important to recognize that there is a tremendous need right now, specifically for single-family homes. We're hearing that. I'm hearing more and more about rental properties having higher vacancy rates, but yet we have an incredible need for single-family homes, which is great that families want to live in the city, but they're having a really difficult time finding a place to live. And so I think, again, the Land Bank has an opportunity to assist with starting to fill that gap as quickly as possible. But I want to remind everyone that the Land Bank isn't just for the city of Grand Rapids. It's a county-wide land bank. And I've said to all of you, I've said multiple times, I've said to our community partners at the county and other cities that housing and affordable housing is a county-wide issue. It's a regional issue. At the Land Bank, we've done a lot of work, and I really give credit to the staff to build relationships with other communities. We're doing projects in Wyoming and Kentwood and a number of townships. But again, I just want to emphasize, today we heard about the work the Land Bank is doing here in our city, but the Land Bank is also doing a lot of work regionally and throughout the county as well. So I think that's important to remember. And then also the MSU study, I think, is going to be I think it's just going to be a really interesting study that is going to give us a lot of information. So I'm excited to have that completed and be able to share those results. Perhaps, David, once that's done, you can come back to the commission and brief us on the outcome, or maybe have that sent to us just so that we're well aware of the outcome of that study. And then last, I think there's a lot being done at the land bank that I know is hard to capture in a brief presentation. But David, can you speak a little bit to the work that we're doing in partnership with other nonprofits as we do the redevelopment of properties? We have a strong commitment to using local contractors, but then also some of the nonprofits we're working with to do this work. Can you just touch on that?
Yeah, certainly the last 5 years, we've increased nonprofit participation and development of properties for affordable housing with Habitat and ICCF and Next Up and New Development. And that has been something that has increased because of having staff in place at the land bank. We have capacity to be able to reach out to them and really meet them and discuss where they're, to meet them at their point of need. And, not that the city of Grand Rapids didn't do that in the past, but we just have more horsepower and more ability to be able to match the needs up, I guess. And so we've increased that probably in areas where maybe affordable housing wouldn't have otherwise happened. And that whole process is being looked at this year for some changes, and so we're looking forward to that because that'll be a benefit to the nonprofits being able to just be better at that, especially in this marketplace. That's really important.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I'll just highlight, I don't know if all the commissioners know, but the land bank we use for demolition, cleanup, maintenance of our properties, we use nonprofits like Next Step and Bethany. So we're employing really vulnerable populations in our community to help do that work, and we're employing youth to assist with that work. Again, we're being intentional with the resources that we have to support the communities that we're doing the work in. And I think that's another thing that we should be proud of. And again, is consistent with our goals here at the city.
Yep, majority is local contracted labor and all the nonprofit youth housing agencies to employ. I guess I also want to say we've been a key partner to Well House, supplying them with all their property, and had some really successful outcomes there. It's really hard to mention everything that we do over the last 5 years. 311, I mean, there's just, the list goes on, and that's, I think you all need to be proud of that we have your support to be able to do that work. So we're all in this together, so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned the nonprofit developers, and you also mentioned that you're modifying your process with them. I know that many of them have spoken with many of us about some concerns. Yeah, okay. So I'm curious to know if the process that you've changed, will those changes address the concerns that they had? Okay, with being more consistent and things of that nature, okay.
So we're in the process of working with them. We have a subcommittee with Housing Advisory, but also there's nonprofit representation on that as we look at updating and revising our nonprofit policy. But also soon the land bank will go into strategic planning. So we're just holding off on a couple things in order to get that started. But we'll be celebrating our 5 years soon, and then we'll go into strategic planning, and part of that will be looking at priorities and some of the current policies and what needs to be revised.
Okay, and then is the Land Bank Board receptive to, from the City of Grand Rapids, us requiring that all properties that we transfer over, that all of them would be affordable? Is the Land Bank, although they're an economic development organization, are they receptive to that?
Well, I can't speak for the full board. So it's a board that's made up of, there's 5 members, and they represent different parts of the county. So that would be a full board discussion. But I think part of our strategic planning process, we'll be talking about all of that. And there's a lot of there's been a lot of conversations about making sure that as the land bank works with municipalities, that there's a strong relationship, but that also that we're meeting the priorities of those municipalities. So I think that would be consistent, but I want to be mindful not to speak for the full board.
Sure. Thank you.
Commissioner?
First of all, I want to thank you for coming and giving us this presentation. It's impressive, and I know you can't cover everything, but it was really encouraging to hear about the work you're doing to employ others in demolition and young people and other contractors. Can you give us a sense, and maybe not today, but when we can expect the MSU study will be done and you'll be done with your decision-making about nonprofits?
The study will be done in March from MSU,
In March.
and I would imagine we will have to have everything resolved in the nonprofits by April to coincide with the tax foreclosure process. So, yeah, that's going to get a lot of attention in the next couple months. So, there's a subcommittee. So
Great.
there's going to be recommendations coming out of that in discussion with the reported to the city.
Thanks for your work on that, too. And I had one other question, and that is, what is the foreclosure climate now? I drive across Leonard Bridge often, and I see a big sign advertising for help for people who are going through foreclosures. But what is the situation now in terms, we know about the hot market, but are we still experiencing many? Do you know?
Well, tax foreclosures are leveling off, according to Treasurer Ken Parrish. So that's, I think we'll probably be at the number that we were pre-crisis, so which would probably be fairly similar to where we were last year. And then there still are bank foreclosures out there. We're still seeing them. The land bank tracks a lot of those. Sometimes we interact with the banks on those. Sometimes those are donated to us. So we are very involved in that process with the banks, and they are still out there.
Have you had any luck getting through to some of these banks that have been hard to track down?
Well, yeah, that's a discussion for a whole nother day.
Is
Just
it?
because
Okay.
it's hard, it's very difficult to purchase them as it is on the, when we interact with the banks, when just the general public interacts with the banks, it's a very difficult process to purchase those. A lot of times it's, fortunately, sometimes they're restricted to homeowner only and when they're through HUD, but when they're through a bank, they typically go to a cash buyer. So that, and we don't always know the outcome of that. So I think it's something to keep an eye on because that's a fierce market that a homeowner's competing in if a homeowner wants to buy one of those. So there's probably a role for the land bank in that process, and certainly we've purchased some of those where it's made sense. But it's, I guess all I can say is we're still seeing them out there across the county. So, and maybe that level is pre-crisis level, but they're still certainly there. They haven't gone away. So, it's a good opportunity for a first home buyer or a developer to get in and make the repairs because they always need repairs. So, something to keep an eye on. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
All right. Colleagues, questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for the
And then,
discussion.
David, can you just make sure that we get a copy of your PowerPoint just so we have the data that you shared available if we
Yep.
need it?
Yep, sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. All right, Commissioners, that will take us to our second item today, which is a resolution approving the submission of a Neighborhood Enterprise Zone Exemption Certificate application for TC 637 Michigan Street LLC redevelopment project.
So moved. Support.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Mayor, just briefly, this is a final approval for a project which you've seen before. The project is at 637 Michigan. It's a mixed-use project consisting of 3,600 square feet of ground floor retail space and 44 market-rate residential units above, including studio apartments, one-bedroom and two-bedroom units. The project investment is $5.9 million with about $4.7 million of construction costs. The developer estimates 13 new jobs at approximately $15 an hour in connection with this project. I should note that it's proposed as a 15-year neighborhood enterprise zone because they project meets 2 city investment criteria contained in your NEZ policy, that being that 25% of the proposed units are Type B units, which is a measure of accessibility, and also that the developer, Sorry. Also that the developer will pay for and install a covered bus shelter outside of their project, which is on the Rapid Lines 13 and 19. This project has been supported by the Midtown Neighborhood Association, the Michigan Street Corridor Association, and by the Michigan Street Corridor Improvement Authority.
All right. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner?
Comments about this project, because Michigan Street has got quite a variety of price points. So we've got market rate, we've got the Diamond Place project where we'll have 100 low income alongside market rate. And this one falls in between. I think for some people, falling in between still feels very high, but we are hitting that workforce population, and they did it after, I think, being engaged with our conversations around affordable housing. They did it very purposely by working with our architect to have smaller units, but still have units that have good storage and amenities for the folks around there. They are hoping eventually to have a grocery store nearby. So it's a very walkable community. I'm happy to see that they're doing something around transit. And I realize that we are closely looking at all of our policies, but I would like to remind the Commission that this has been in the pipeline for a while. I think they're very aware, too, the Third Coast and all of our developers, that we're revisiting our thinking around our policies. But I'm pleased that they were responsive to this need, and pleased that Michigan Street has such a nice variety of mixed income.
So, Commissioners, just to point out, and you have this in front of you, that these units fall within 80% to 100% AMI, correct?
That is correct, and it might be worth noting that actually one part of their financing for this is going to require that. It's a newer source of financing that Third Coast has accessed, so there will be a rent restriction on this tied to one form of their financing. Yeah.
Is that through MEDC
It's through
or MISHA?
Michigan Community Capital, which used to be the Michigan Magnet Fund.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, thank you. Other questions, Commissioner?
I was on record the last time this came before saying this will be the last one that I'll vote for, so I'm going to reiterate what I said before. I still have concerns that we need to address projects like this to put a little bit more teeth, or actually not teeth, that's the wrong word, put a few more carrots to encourage developers to either include or contribute to affordable housing. I'm confident and really appreciate, I'm confident in Commissioner O'Connor's leadership of the Housing Subcommittee and appreciate the work that we are doing. He's pushing it forward very fast because he understands there's a need, and I fully believe that before another one of these does come, I think we will have something in place. So I've seen a model done in Boulder, Colorado, where a developer can choose not to, but then has to contribute to an affordable housing trust fund in lieu of that. I don't have a problem with that per se. I mean, those kind of things are on the table. What has now become known as the Schaefer Plan, where we look at as we look at the financial arrangement of these, and after it's placed in service, and after that first year, whatever that positive net proceed is put into a affordable housing fund. I think we're coming up with some creative solutions. But again, I do want to encourage us. I haven't heard yet about a tangible time or process for reviewing our NEZ policy, and I want to encourage us to do that. But I will vote yes, because I've been yes on all these leading to this last vote, but I want to be on record going forward that I want to see some changes.
Well, and Commissioners, let me jump in. I want to be really mindful not to get ahead of ourselves with the recommendations that will come out of the Housing Advisory Committee. Commissioner O'Connor and I have talked about timeline. Our hope is to have the recommendations to us in May so that can be a part of our larger budget discussions. And then also we'll be able to spend time through the budget process. You know, we haven't finalized that schedule yet, but the intent is to spend some significant time talking about the recommendations, our recommendations, have that embedded into our budget process, and then also look at some of those policy changes during that same time. So again, I want to be mindful to give that committee time to do their work, and then we'll have that discussion as a full body before we finalize our budget in June.
Very good.
I have a question. Just one more comment. I appreciate, Mayor, your comments about process. I think that we have called residents together, citizens to work through this, and so I just want to caution us to be careful about not making decisions for them. I think we need to honor this process. And the other thing is that it would be very helpful, maybe the manager can give us some sense of what our tax captures have been for us to have, any sense of what we're working with as we go into our conversations about community development. I think it would be helpful for our committee to have a sense of that too, and we're starting those this week. Thanks.
All right, any other questions or comments about this request before us today? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, thank you. All right, next we have a resolution accepting the Granville Avenue Area-Specific Plan for release for public comment for amendment to the 2002 Grand Rapids Master Plan.
So moved.
Support.
All right, and so we have Suzanne, and then we also, we have Suzanne Schultz with us, but we also have members who worked on this plan, and we are excited to have it come before us today. So you want to take it from there, Suzanne?
I am just going to set this up and let Julie take it away. So we, as part of a master plan amendment, this is an area-specific plan for the Granville Avenue neighborhood, or the Roosevelt Park neighborhood with Granville Avenue transects. When we do master plan amendments, it's governed by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, which sets out a specific process for review and approval. As established in the Act, a minimum 42-day comment period is required before you can consider the plan for approval. So the Planning Commission reviewed the draft document on January 26th and voted in support of forwarding the plan to the City Commission to release it for public comment. You will then hold a public hearing, as will the Planning Commission. And so if you decide today that you would like to advance the plan for public comment, we would then send letters out with the 42-day notice beginning tomorrow. After that, March 29th would be the end of that comment period, and the Planning Commission would hold its public hearing on April 13th, with it coming to the City Commission for adoption on April 25th, unless you decided another public hearing was necessary. So it takes a little while to kind of go through the process as defined by the Act, but that is where we're at, and it's a pleasure to be able to introduce the neighborhood. They have worked very hard on this plan and have gotten a lot of great feedback. So I'll turn it over to Julie.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners, ladies and city managers. The Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association is proud to bring before you this area-specific plan in the effort to ensure that the neighborhood growth and development of our neighborhood reflects the needs and wishes of its residents, businesses, and institutions. The Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association has assembled the Granville Avenue Development Committee, and their task was to develop the plan to clarify the vision and future of our neighborhood. The committee is comprised of our strong neighborhood partners such as Habitat for Humanity, Link, Dwelling Place, neighborhood residents, businesses, and institutions. In the spring of last year, in March, we hired Mark Miller with Netterveld and Lene Wells with Williams & Works, who have been working diligently with us to put this plan together. I'm specifically excited about it because I feel like we did a diligent way of getting the residents involved, the businesses. We have excitement about it. We're seeing some things from the plan that we have as goals and visions that are already beginning to take place, and so that's getting residents even more excited about it. This morning I have with me Granville Avenue Granville Avenue Business Association President Sini Jordan, my staff, Liz and Rocio, residents, Margarita and Maria, and Lene and Mark with us this morning. Mark is going to go ahead and give you a short presentation and to give you a little more depth into what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I'll try to get to my presentation.
It's tricky.
It is. I can't close out.
Almonte to the rescue.
Thank you.
Mayor, as long as we're waiting,
Yeah,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to thank the neighborhood group for what they did. What they have done with this plan also leads to some actionable things to start. And I think maybe you've gotten the emails, I know I have, about, changing the route for trucks. And so I think that there's a few things that you can even start, and have already been started on right now. And we always like to see these plans be used. And I think that the neighborhood's are already figuring out how to do that. So I want to just thank them for their effort, but also getting grassroots to make some change is already happening. So.
Yeah, thank you, and I want to thank our First Ward commissioners for their commitment to this as well.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm going to try to get through this year of work that we've put into this, and it's about 107 pages. I have about 13 slides. Hopefully we can do that in about 10 minutes. So this is a plan to establish the neighborhood vision. It's a plan to give the neighborhood a voice. And importantly, it's a bilingual plan that's widely understood and community supported. It's also very highly graphic, which plays into the bilingual nature of it. So we've spent a lot of time sort of translating and making sure that our languages are tied together to make the plan widely understood. And we're happy that it's pretty widely and community supported. So just briefly about the demographics, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with them. There's a lot of them in the plan that you can peruse. The average household size in the neighborhood is 4, and that's in comparison to about 2.49 for the city of Grand Rapids. So it's much more robustly household size. But more importantly, there are 49% of the units are renter occupied, 51% are home ownership. And that's a trend that's continually changing in the neighborhood, where it's getting more home ownership. That's something that the neighborhood holds very highly and wants to continue that trend. So this plan begins to try to cement that process and make sure that we keep that momentum moving. The other thing that's in this plan, when you have the digital file of it, is a video. And I encourage you to click on that video and watch it. It really tells us about the neighborhood more than all of these charts and graphs can do. It gives us the layers of the different people and the different places that are in the neighborhood. And I think it really tells us a lot about this neighborhood. Just to give you a little bit on the process, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this just because of the amount that we did. So this graph shows us, or this line shows us, back in 1998, the neighborhood did a plan. So that's almost 20 years ago. And one of the things that came out of that plan was to try to remove the truck route from Granville Avenue. Interestingly enough, 20 years later, this plan also says that. So we didn't really implement what we had hoped back in 1998. This graph tells us all about sort of the process that we went through, and I'm going to go briefly through all the input that we did over the course of about the last year. We had a booth at the Neighborhood Family Day last June. We had over 100 participants at that booth. We had a kids planning session in June where 28 neighborhood kids sort of envisioned their neighborhood. And when you look at this plan, you can see some of their images intermixed through the plan, which I think is also important and telling in some of the things that they came up with as residents of the neighborhood. We had a neighborhood survey in July. We had door-to-door engagement with the business owners in July, where we engaged 55 business owners. We had door-to-door engagement with the homeowners, where we engaged 42 different homeowners. We had a week-long charrette where over 100 people showed up and gave us their vision for the corridor. And we sat down with them during that process and sketched things and talked to them and sort of tried to craft this vision at that point. We had numerous post-charrette meetings, which included one at the neighborhood offices where we went through what we had created to that point. We had a post-charrette business association meeting. We had a meeting with the Plaza Roosevelt Development Committee, which is currently working on a project on Granville Avenue. We had a meeting with city leadership. We had a community presentation of the draft plan where we took comment. We had a tactical demonstration during Art Prize along Granville Avenue at Rumsey Street that showed some of the things that we could do in traffic calming for that corridor. We had a public meeting with the neighborhood on January 19th, which was our final meeting. And at that point, I think we were starting to see some fatigue within the neighborhood in terms of planning. So we had a couple questions that wanted to know when we were going to start doing something. So I think that tells us that, A, that we reached out to people and they sort of maybe got fatigued by that, and now they really want to take the plan and they want to do something with it. And I think that that's the important thing about these plans. And then the other thing that happened at that meeting is that we had numerous people, between 15 and 20, I think, sign up for various roles to continue the plan's life. So that's an important thing to also keep in mind as I go through the rest of these slides. So the plan really clearly states what the vision is, and it's categorized into these 5 different things that talk about movement and connections. Safe and secure, culture and beauty, clean and green, and function and form. And almost everything within the plan is organized around those visions. Highlights of those visions really is to humanize Granville Avenue. It's to get the trucks off from it. It's to take back portions of it from MDOT so that we don't have those trucks on there. The neighborhood does not feel safe crossing this street, and many of their assets are on one side and many of them live on the other side. So crossing it has become an issue. It was probably 90% of the people that we talked to had that as their primary issue. The other thing that we learned was that the neighborhood really is concerned about displacement within the neighborhood, so we have to be cognizant of that. They have a very diverse neighborhood. There's a lot of sort of affordable housing within the neighborhood today, and some of the biggest concerns are just simple, they don't want their neighbor of 20 years to have to leave. So that's certainly something that permeates this plan and that we're very cognizant of. The plan is organized not only with the vision, which is really the core of it, but also these techniques, which I will get into, that begin to build toward that vision. There's also a future land use plan that provides the framework for the vision. And then there's illustrations of 7 places along the corridor that express what the vision could look like in the future. And this is a way to convey what that vision could be. So these are sort of the snapshot of those technique sheets. They're a little bit more robust in the plan, but we've consolidated them for this presentation. And there are little things and big things that can be done to sort of move this vision towards reality. And some of them are simple, like planting trees. Some of them are a little bit more rigorous in terms of policy changes. Some of them are just simple things like painting the parking that's on Granville Avenue so that it's more defined, because right now people actually drive in the parking lane at rush hour and make the avenue a lot more inhumane for people trying to cross it. So there's a slew of these all organized under that vision: movement, connection, safe and secure, clean and green, culture and beauty. Then we get to function and form. And function and form is really about that future land use plan. So that's a plan that's in this document, and that really begins to cast the vision for the corridor. And you'll notice that the red portions of this plan are really what we would think of as a TBA. So there's a lot of mixed use happening in there. There's retail at the ground floor. There's office at the ground floor in this case. That's part of the vision. There's industry still along the edges of this, because that's very important for this neighborhood as well. And they coexist for the most part, very well together. And then there's an intermixing of yellow along the corridor, which is basically the single-family home. So if you walk along this corridor or even drive along this corridor, you see a cadence of incremental development, of a pattern that has sort of changed over time, both incrementally and at a very small scale. And trying to preserve some of that stuff within this corridor becomes very important as we move forward, so that someday this whole corridor isn't 5-story or 4-story buildings acting as a wall along that corridor. So we're very cognizant of that, and you'll see that there's a lot of red and yellow intermixed, particularly in the middle of the corridor between the north and south sides. The second slide, or the second image on this slide, is really the zoning map, and we were very proactive in determining exactly what parcels were part of that change. So some of them do ultimately need to be rezoned, and that's part of the policy actions that would have to go with this plan. Incidentally, to go back to the conversation with David earlier, there's some spots on here, the green pieces on here, there's 3 parcels that were actually city-owned or what he called other parcels that have been taken over by the city, and we propose parks on them. So there was a lot of work actually happening at the charrette when we were hearing about these pieces of land that we ended up moving forward right at that time. So these are, in summary, these are the sort of what we were calling the place plans for this, and these are the things that execute or sort of show that vision that we talk about, and they show it graphically. And then they also overlay all of these elements, the techniques that I talked about earlier, onto this, so they show where these things could be done in these 7 places. Each of these 7 places do pretty much encompass the corridor. So we start on the north end at the Wealthy Gateway, and then we go to Plaza Rumsey, Mural View, Library Park, School Crossing, Flower Hill, and then we finally get down to the southern end of this where it curves, and that's called Roosevelt Curve, interestingly enough. So, and that one actually has a rendering that goes with it that shows sort of the transformation of that little sliver of street and turning it into a plaza. Finally, at the end of the plan, as all plans have, there's action items. And these action items are both big and small, just like many of the things in the plan. And they begin to show what the action is, who the partners are within that action, and what the success indicator for that is. And some of these are again, sort of small. I mean, there's again, the policy of changing the truck route, getting local control of the MDOT corridor, painting the parking, planting trees, getting better bus shelters. Many of the bus shelters along this corridor are not shelters at all, but simply benches. And interestingly enough, the 2 bus lines that run along here have a very high ridership because many of the people on this corridor do not drive, and they rely upon those buses to get to work. So I think that that's probably this is the last slide, and it's the final page of the document, and it's basically the conclusion. It's trying to summarize this plan in a couple paragraphs. And one of the things that are important, and I think important for this body, is that there are many opportunities within our community to plug into the community, and that would be Vital Streets Commission, that would be Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, that would be Mobile GR, and we would really want to promote the residents of this neighborhood and business owners of this neighborhood to get involved in those commissions, to be more engaged in these conversations, because many of the things that we're talking about are affected by and impacted by the decisions that happen at those commissions and committees. So we make a list of those, and I think going back to that list that I talked about earlier where people signed up for things, we sort of have this beginning of this list for engagement with these neighbors to have them be more engaged in the city of Grand Rapids day-to-day activities. So with that, that's pretty much my presentation, and we're happy to take questions. And as Jules said, we've got plenty of people here, both business owners and residents, who have probably lots more to say.
Great, thank you. Thanks. I'll start by adding my thanks to everyone who worked so hard on this. This is really a great plan. As it's been in progress, I've been updated, and I've been really impressed by the incredible engagement and level of work. I particularly enjoy the fact that you have included both action steps as well as success indicators in this plan. As a body, I think we should make sure that that's included in every single future plan that we adopt. I think that's critical. I've said not only as a commissioner but also as mayor, I think people get very frustrated with plans that sit on a shelf and collect dust, or plans that we adopt and then a year later we approve things that are not consistent with the plan. I think those are 2 frustration points for a lot of people in this community, and we have to be extremely mindful of that. So thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone who is here today and for all the work, including the work of city staff. So I'll turn it to my colleagues. Commissioner O'Connor, you want to start?
Absolutely. I'm very excited about the opportunity for this plan. This will be the 3rd ASP that's been adopted in the First Ward, and it's great to see that these continue to evolve, and I think they get better every time one gets completed. And I feel that this is going to be very transformative for the neighborhood, with a couple of key projects coming in that are going to have some significant impact. I know you've been mindful of those projects to make sure that they're well incorporated into the plan, so that they can be anchors for future success here. So thank you for the neighborhood and the business community, and really getting in and getting everyone involved so that all perspectives are represented here.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in being very thoughtful before communicating, and I'm going to throw out anything resembling political correctness and just say that this is the bomb. Anyone who needs a translation, we can talk afterwards, but this plan is extremely impressive. I want to say thank you also to all of the individuals who are involved, whether you were at the grassroots level, at the small business level. I literally felt like a kid again, looking through the wish book during Christmas time and saying, I want that, and I want that, and I want that. I saw it as something that was very, very thorough. I saw it as something that was very, very inclusive. You can't help but to recognize the focus on equity and recognizing, again, the power of diversity that exists within that corridor. And I think that what you have done is you have reset the bar with regards to what ASPs should be. And so, again, thank you very much for the work that you put into it, for the sweat equity. And also want to take an opportunity to publicly thank Lene Wells for the feedback that she provided us for the Parks Master Plan. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Lene. Go ahead.
Well, I would agree with what my colleagues have said, to thank you very much for your hard work on this. This is just an amazing plan. It's been so much fun to read through it. Appreciate the metrics, appreciate all your work. Jules, you've been there a long time, and you're obviously a good listener. Maria, you and I talked about this, and I just wanted to say that Maria's comments, if I may, I'd like to repeat, because she said that this was a true example of voice. And especially that, Lene, because of your bilingual ability, that you involved so many of the women in the community and heard their voices. So this is what this commission is wanting to do. I know that you've now gone to the Urban League, but the Urban Core Collective, which has come out of that effort, is all about reaching out and encouraging community voice in ways that we haven't done it before, so that you are building the community that you want. And I look so forward to going there to shop and eat and enjoy myself in a recreated Roosevelt Park. So this is very exciting. You know, you have our support, and I was very impressed too with Mark and Lene and your plans and how you've got very doable things, you know, to start planting those trees with Friends of Grand Rapids Park. So it all fits together so well. So thank you so much for your work.
Yeah. Thank you. Great. All right. Any other questions or comments?
One very quick comment. What struck me, or what jumped off the page to me when I reviewed this on Saturday, was as evidence that it's, and I don't mean this to be offensive to Mark. Mark used the words they and them a lot in your presentation. It's because you're not from the neighborhood, so you have to say they and them. But what's reflected to me is this is your plan because you renamed it. That's how you claim something, right? You rename it. So it's not the Granville Avenue area-specific plan. All of our plans say, no, this is Long Live the Avenue, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in Spanish because I'm not bilingual. So, you know, that jumps off the page to me, and I've known you folks at Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association for years, and I know that once this is adopted, you will not let us off the hook on this. So, and the last thing, I want to offer strong support for getting that truck route changed. I, too, am trying to change a truck route on Madison Avenue. It goes right through the heart of a business district, and walking in that neighborhood as I do, it's very harrowing, standing at a street corner, waiting to cross the street, and a big 18-wheel semi is trying to jump on the curb to turn the corner, and you've got schools there, and so, you know, anything we as a city can do to help you with that, we need to do that. That's really important. It affects the vibrancy and the health of a neighborhood.
Yeah, and commissioners, I should say, I've already had conversations with Eric about this, and I know that city staff are actively working on it. So, Commissioner.
Just a couple comments. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, so they say. Southtown is looking to develop their own ASP, and I have a feeling that there will be some things duplicated from this great plan that you all have spent a lot of energy putting together. This neighborhood is my second neighborhood. I'm in this neighborhood Monday through Friday, and I'm happy to see the work that has gone into it and how my family will be impacted by the changes that you are proposing. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks. All right, commissioners, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? It carries. All right, thank you. All right, next that will take us to our last item to vote on to this morning, and that is a resolution setting the date to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Grand Rapids City Code to change the Automobile Parking Commission to the Mobile GR Commission.
So moved.
Support.
All right, Josh Naramore, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, good morning. So as the title of the action item is, so this resolution is to publish a proposed ordinance for future consideration of the City Commission to amend the City Code to change from the Automobile Parking Commission to Mobile GR Commission. So the Parking Commission made this recommendation at their December meeting for City Commission consideration. So just wanting to point out that parking is a key part of overall mobility that is necessary to serve the future of the city. But as our department, the Mobile GR and Parking Department, continues to evolve to support additional responsibilities and changes in culture, there's an opportunity really to also evolve the Automobile Parking Commission. There's a lot to be in just the name of the commission itself. So the Mobile GR Commission will provide support to the city's economic and quality of life goals by managing and supporting a variety of transportation choices that are affordable, convenient, attractive to all residents, employers, employees, as well as visitors. This group would provide guidance on implementation of both new parking and other mobility initiatives. And the commission will, this proposal would increase the membership on the commission from 9 members to 13 members that would all serve staggered 3-year terms. And the intent of increasing the membership is to balance skill sets and interests that better reflect the diversity of the city. And the expanded membership will enable representation of both neighborhood as well as downtown interests. So.
All right, thank you, Josh. Thanks for your work on this. I'm going to first turn to Commissioner Kelly, who serves on our Parking Commission. I know they've had conversations about this, and I'll let you speak to it first, and then.
Thank you. I'm excited about the expansion and of the committee for a couple of reasons, but as I listened to the presentation right before this, you talked about getting people involved in things like Vital Streets, the Parks Boards, and I would add Parking Commission. So Roosevelt Park, when you go back, consider getting involved in these things. They may not sound as exciting as they truly are, but this is where you start to learn the nuts and bolts of the city. And Vital Streets, for example, it's not just about the streets. It's about the bike lanes, and it's about the sidewalks, and it's about the trees. It's about that public space. So that's what we also consider on the Parking Commission. So I want to thank you, Josh, for your leadership. You're working in a tough arena, but I think we're moving forward, and I know that you're doing that as quickly as you can. You've only been here 1 year, and I'm amazed at the progress that you've made, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, other questions or comments? No? Commissioners? All right, so we will, I'll call the question on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right. So Commissioners, we have a special briefing at 11 though, correct? So we have about a 29-minute break to catch up on a few things. And then also, Commissioners, we have Economic Development Project Team today at 12:30. And then we have our commission meeting tonight back here. And we are adjourned. I'll see you back in here at 11 a.m. sharp. Thank you.